Thank you, and welcome to the dinner theater portion of our weekend. Thank you very much. It really is an honor. I was so honored to be invited to be part of this awe-inspiring company of rabbis and teachers. And of course, it's very special to be back here at Beth, where I grew up and where my love of Judaism and Torah were nurtured. And I want to say that those of you who know rabbis' kids know that it's not automatic that a rabbi's kid wants to be a rabbi. And as I've reflected about being back here, I realized that there were many other adults and also a peer group that helped me to become a Jew of my own here at Beth Am, and of course, got to throw in Machane Ramah as well. So, one last thought. I realized that since 1950, Temple Beth Am has had 3 rabbis. And as you may know, there are some congregations that can rip through 3 rabbis in less than 10 years. And those congregations generally don't flourish. So my father was here for 35 years. Joel Rembam was 25, and Rabbi Kligfeld is 16 years, and Cain Yerbu, right? And I was very touched by something he said last night. Is he here? He's around. Okay, at any rate, that talking about the relationship he has and all of the wonderful professionals here have with the congregation. And, 3 rabbis in 75 years, that's the congregation too. It means, first of all, they're good at picking rabbis and senior rabbis. And secondly, that there's a culture of kavod and collaboration. And maybe one of the most important things he said about that is they have permission to fail, to try stuff and fail. And I spent 33 years as an English major in Silicon Valley serving the engineers. And I learned about the iterative process, which is you try something, you see if it works, you learn from it, and you move on. So many institutions don't allow for that. So that shows the level of trust and everything about the relationship here. So that is also something, along with prayer and Torah, that needs to be exported back to many of our congregations. Maybe not yours, but many congregations. Okay. Birshut Rabotai. So when considering a Torah reading, we have a powerful lens for sharpening our discernment, the inexhaustible treasure of our rabbis and meforshim over the ages. And we learn that a verse is not a verse. A verse is a constellation of meaning. And we even have this wonderful institute, the people won't even know what a Mikro Kodolo is soon, and they'll just go to Sefaria. But, with all these traditional commentators on the page, often disagreeing with one another explicitly by name. So that's, I guess if you ask me what my spirituality is getting that Torah, getting the multiplicity of voices that are found in every verse. So this afternoon we begin reading Sefer Shemot. So of course we know this story. It's our people's master narrative. It's mentioned all the time. And one thing in reading what we read today, one verse just jumped out at me. Vayakam melech hadash al Misraim asher lo yada et Yosef. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. 10 words that change everything for Bnei Yisrael. This verse is what in literary terms is called the inciting incident. The inciting incident. According to one definition, the event that sets the main character or characters on the journey that will occupy them through the narrative. Exactly what happens in that verse. And following that, enslavement, oppression, liberation, Exodus, the giving of the Torah, the wanderings, all that comes from Pharaoh's forgetting Joseph. So imagine how devastating this was for Bnei Yisrael. They felt safe in their allotment in Goshen, thanks to Joseph's saving Egypt from famine. And with 10 words, their world is overturned and their security vanished. I don't think these days we have to use much imagination to understand what they felt, both from what's going on right now, but also from post-October 7th. That's not my theme today, but I couldn't help noticing that resonance. So now back to the verse. The plain sense of the verse seems obvious. Time passed, the Israelites grew more numerous, and Joseph had faded into history. But our rabbis were never content with the obvious. So there's a midrash found in Tractate Sota, and there's a dispute between Rav and Shmuel, as there often was. And they're disagreeing essentially about that one word, chadash, new. Rav goes with the plain meaning, chadash mamash, right? Because that's what it says. So there was a new king. Shmuel complicates things. No, it was the same Pharaoh, Shenit Kadshu Gzerotav, who renewed his decrees, or we might say revised his decrees. So how do we know it was the same Pharaoh, according to Shmuel? Well, it doesn't say that Pharaoh died, so it had to be the same Pharaoh. So, who knew not Joseph means that he was like someone who did not know him at all. In other words, ingratitude, deliberate unknowing. So our Eitz Chaim commentary refers to a fairly obscure Midrash Mishnat, Rabbi Eliezer, but I'm going to bring you more of the full text. Was it not the case that the Egyptians knew of, and by the way, as you'll hearing, it expands it to all of Egypt, forgetting, unknowing. Was it not the case that the Egyptians knew of Joseph's kindness to them? Rather, they knew of it, but didn't consider it and were ungrateful for it. The Hebrew is stronger. They denied his goodness. And in the end, they denied God's goodness. As Pharaoh said, I do not know the Lord. Thus, ingratitude is compared to denying God. So, who knows why this was? I mean, Pharaoh, maybe it was a case of, what have you done for me lately? Maybe it was, well, sometimes when someone does somebody a favor, they resent it in a way. And if you're an absolute monarch, you certainly resent being reminded that you were dependent on someone, let alone a foreigner. But whatever the case, no gratitude. So, but it's not just Pharaoh. It's easy for people to lose track of that for which they should be grateful. It seems like there's a gratitude muscle which atrophies if not exercised. It's easy to forget or ignore the things that people do for us, or even worse, feel entitled. And it's a vast network of people. There's a wonderful book by A.J. Jacobs called Thanks a Thousand, where he traced, anybody know this book? Where he traces where his coffee came from. He goes all the way back to Colombia and finds 1,000 pieces of what comes to him every day. Likewise with God. God's gifts to us, the magnificent universe, life, health, family, love, and beauty, are so present in our daily lives that in some ways it's even easier to take them for granted. Fortunately, our liturgy provides calisthenics to maintain gratitude muscle tone. And, there's one of these convergences earlier. Rabbi Ingber also referenced Rabbi Meir, who said you should say 100 brachot a day. So to me, in thinking about that, that means, first of all, it's possible to say 100 brachot a day. There's 100 possible opportunities to praise God, to be grateful. But on the other hand, legislating that many, it's easy to fall into, check, and not have it in that internal sense of gratitude. So what I want to do for the rest of my time up here is talk about the very first moments of consciousness in the morning. So I'm going to tell you things you know, but I hope to give a little more understanding. When we first wake up, before we get out of bed, we say, what? Modeh lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. No name of God in it, so we don't need to look for our kippah. She'achazarta bi nishmati b'chemla laba emunatach. I thank you, living and eternal sovereign, for your kindness in restoring my soul. How great is your faithfulness. We wake up to appreciation. Thank you, God. I'm alive. I don't take that for granted. And if you're like me, some mornings this is a heavy lift. I'm not a morning person, so all the more necessary. Then there are the Birchot HaShachar, which we generally recite in the morning service. But the Talmud tells us in Brachot, these were originally crafted to be said at particular steps of arising in the morning. So I'm going to tell you some of them. And before I do that, I want to say that our teachers were sensitive to the fact that there are people who, for some of these, not possible. And I became even more sensitive. I had some vision loss in the last year. So for the very first one, I think about it differently now. And so they actually said that if you're not able, like we say, rise if you're able, then don't do that bracha. We understand that might be difficult, a heavy lift for you. So, after Modani, Pokeach Ivrin, who gives sight to the blind, for when you open your eyes. Matir Asurin, who releases the bound, when you stretch and sit up. Rok Ha'aretz Al Hamayim, who stretches out the earth above the waters. That's when you step out of bed onto the solid ground of God's creation. Zokef Kefufim, who straightens those who are bent, when you stand up straight. Hamechim Mitzadei Gaver, who steadies our steps when you begin walking. And the last one, which I tend to want to say with fervor, Hanoten Li'ayev Koach, who gives strength to the weary. But I think maybe after you've done this other stuff with, maybe you're a little less weary. So normally these are things most of us get to do every morning. And yet, maybe they're worthy of our pausing to think about them. So once I revisited this teaching as I was preparing last week, I decided to try to do this, to get up in the morning and after Modani to do each one, instead of doing what most of us do when we first get up in the morning. We reach for our phone, right? Maybe not everybody. God bless you. You're a better person than I am. So even doing that, even not reaching the phone first thing was healing, So, and it really was a great exercise. I'm going to try to continue it. So there's one last bracha I want to mention. It's in the Siddur Shalom. It's the Asher Yatzar. And it's introduced in the old Sim Shalom, rather. We are grateful for the gift of our body. So this is the Lev Shalem translation. So how many people are already familiar with this blessing? Okay, not everybody. Oh, good. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, who crafted the human body with wisdom, creating with it many openings and passageways. It is known and revealed to you that should even a single passageway rupture or a single opening close up, it would no longer be possible to exist and stand before you. Baruch atah Adonai, healer of all flesh, umafli la'asot, who creates wondrously. It's a beautiful blessing. And people who don't know are startled to learn that, as the Lev Shalem delicately puts it, this bracha is to be recited after taking care of one's bodily functions. Okay? And why is that startling? Because we live in a culture that would say, ugh. But we know that Judaism believes in our embodied soul, and so nothing that God created is not worthy of gratitude. And so it stands in the Siddur as a good thing to do. Good health is not to be taken for granted. Visiting people over the years in the hospital, I was constantly discovering new things that could go wrong that I didn't even know about. And, this is incredibly complicated and interconnected. And I started wondering, well, exactly how many things can go wrong, and so I consulted Professor Google. There's something called the Malacards, the Human Disease Database. Anyone can take a guess how many diseases are listed? Anybody know? 26,000. Yeah, 26,000 things that can go wrong. And yet most of us, most of the time, are healthy, Kanahura. And when we aren't, often enough, the holy work of medical healing and our body's own divinely created resilience can return us to health. So, we can wake up, groan, pry ourselves out of bed, and stumble eyes half open through our morning. Or we can have our tefillot highlight the many occasions for gratitude, even in the most everyday and routine moments of our lives. And I actually think it's no accident that our liturgy kind of front-loaded so many brachot for those very first moments of our day. What a great way to start out. In Shmuel's reading of our pivotal verse, Pharaoh chose to know not Joseph. And consider how much suffering and destruction came from that. For us, Pharaoh is a wonderful negative example. You could create a whole moral system around don't be like Pharaoh, right? And it teaches us to saturate our lives with gratitude, to receive every day as a gift and a blessing from God. So as I was preparing these words, I thought, well, wait a minute, isn't this obvious? Are these just greeting card sentiments? But then I realized our rabbis were wise because they knew how easy it really is to get caught up in life's daily demands and how often we aren't mindful of their worth. Gratitude must be nurtured every day, all day. We need constant reminders to keep us conscious. We need kavanah, not just for prayers, but for life. So I'd like to conclude with lines from a poem by the wonderful Marge Piercy. And again, if you don't know Marge Piercy, you should find her. She has a book called The Art of Blessing the Day, which is her Jewish-themed poems. And that title, The Art of Blessing the Day, is the title of this poem, of which I'm going to read a portion. The discipline of blessings is to taste each moment, the bitter, the sour, the sweet, and the salty, and be glad for what does not hurt. The art is in compressing attention to each little and big blossom of the tree of life, to let the tongue sing each fruit, its savor, its aroma, and its use. Attention is love. What we must give children, mothers, fathers, pets, our friends, the news, the woes of others. Attention is love. Our tradition helps us pay attention. Love of the world, of people, of God. And with that loving attention comes gratitude, which reveals God's gifts wherever we look.